The man blinked, looking around. He was in a room he didn't recognize. He was tied to a bed. Several wires extended from his chest to a monitor. His heartbeat was steady. But his mind was completely blank. The door opened. A young nurse walked in. She tried to smile. "Mr. Harris, you're finally waking up." The man frowned. "Harris? Is that my name?" The nurse hesitated. "Yes, John Harris. You were in a car accident 3 weeks ago. Your car hit a truck. The police identified you through your ID." He closed his eyes. Everything was blurry. He tried to remember a face, but his mind was empty. "Am I a cop?" The woman nodded. "Yes, a veteran officer. 15 years in the Chicago Police Department." Something shifted in the room at that moment. A word lingered in the air. Cop. It didn't sound unfamiliar, but it echoed in a disturbing way, as if a dark wave was whispering from the past with that word. But he remembered nothing. Not his badge, not his uniform, not a single second of those 15 years. On the second day, a middle-aged man visited his room, serious-faced, wearing a black leather jacket. "I'm Lieutenant Rodriguez. We were partners. The day before the accident, we were on duty together." John didn't remember him either. Rodriguez left a folder. "This is your file. Duty schedule, statements, a few photos. Maybe it'll trigger something." John opened the file. Photos. Hands holding a gun. Pinning down a suspect. Standing at the front line of a protest. But the expression on his face looked unfamiliar, harsh, rigid, cold. In one photo, he was smiling, but his eyes were vacant. Next to him, a man was pinned to the ground, handcuffed, a black man. He looked terrified. John's hands trembled. "Was I that kind of person?" Rodriguez looked away. "There are things you might not want to remember, John, but the past hasn't been erased." On the fourth day, there was a mix-up in hospital records. A woman came in as a visitor, claiming to know him, but she was black and she called him Marcus. John was stunned. "Marcus?" The woman wiped her tears. "Yes, I've known you since we were kids. I came as soon as I heard about the accident. When will you be discharged?" On the fourth day, there was a mix-up in hospital records. A woman came in as a visitor, claiming to know him, but she was black and she called him Marcus. John was stunned. "Marcus?" The woman wiped her tears. "Yes, I've known you since we were kids. I came as soon as I heard about the accident. When will you be discharged?" John thought about what Rodriguez had said. Cop protest. Handcuffs. But this woman said she'd known him since childhood. Two realities had begun to collide. On one side, the identity of a police officer. On the other, a past that came calling with the name Marcus. Which one was true? Which one was more just? To find the answer, remembering wouldn't be enough. He would have to live to understand. When discharge day came, John still didn't know who he was. His memory was foggy, his past a tangle. Some called him officer, others said Marcus. But neither his passport nor his license offered clear proof. At the crash site, both a police badge and a different wallet had been found. It was still uncertain which belonged to him. The hospital could no longer keep him. Social services stepped in to help clarify his identity. And, at least temporarily, it was decided that he'd be sent to the home of the person known as Marcus, South Side, Chicago. The southern neighborhoods, marked by unemployment, racism, and systemic discrimination. John, now Marcus, was taken to a house said to be from his childhood. An elderly woman opened the door. Her eyes first showed surprise, then joy. "Marcus, my son, is it really you?" She embraced him as if she had known him all her life. John stood frozen. He didn't know the woman hugging him, but the warmth, it resembled something he hadn't felt in a very long time. A home, a scent, old furniture, faded photos on the wall, and one childhood portrait. Underneath it, it read, Marcus, 1986. The child in the photo looked a lot like him. His first night was difficult. The elderly woman, who wanted him to call her Mom, cooked him soft, comforting food, but John was confused. Was he a cop, or was he a kid from this neighborhood? The next day, he walked the streets of the neighborhood. People greeted him. "Marcus, what's up, man?" a shopkeeper shouted. "Hey, You still haven't fixed the basketball hoop." People seemed to know him, but he still didn't know himself. The first real shock came one morning. There was a protest. Young black men and women marched with signs, chanting against police brutality. "Justice for Elijah!" they shouted. John stood among the crowd. A woman pointed at a sign she was carrying. "Shot by Officer John Harris, Elijah Moore, 17 years old." John's blood ran cold. The face in the photo, yes, it was his. Below the photo, the name John Harris. That meant him. Suddenly he couldn't breathe. In the middle of the crowd, he was carrying both identities at once. Marcus, the kid from the block. John Harris, the officer accused of racism. The youth were angry. In this city, cops don't mean justice. They mean oppression. Enough is enough. John stepped back, but something caught his attention. Seeing his own face on a protest poster, being the target of that anger, it was striking. Because deep inside, a spark of regret had been lit. And the people who knew him now weren't reacting to a man from the past. They were trusting the man they saw in front of them. The next day, the old woman, his mother, handed him a box. "Some of your memories," she said. Inside were a few cassette tapes, a basketball trophy, and a letter. The handwriting looked like his, but at the bottom it was signed Marcus. The letter read, "Sometimes people don't want to see you as you are. But no matter what, you have to choose goodness. Stop hating the system. Don't silence the voice of your conscience." John's hands trembled. For the first time in his life, those words felt true. But a true moment of decision was at the door. Because within a few days, an official letter arrived from the police department. Hospital records and fingerprint analysis had confirmed his identity, John Harris, senior police officer. And a pending internal affairs investigation in his file. They were calling him back into the force, but now he wasn't just a cop. He was also a man who had walked in Marcus's shoes, who had felt the pain of these people, who had touched another life. When he stepped into the gray building of the Chicago Police Department, it all felt like a dream from someone else's life. Marble floors, fluorescent lights, radio chatter, the hum of dispatch, all familiar, but none of it felt like his anymore. At the entrance, officers nodded at him. "Welcome back, Harris. You were gone 3 weeks, but it felt like a year." Everyone inside called him Harris, but in his mind the name Marcus still echoed. The voices clashed inside his head. His first meeting with Internal Affairs was more tense than he expected. "Do you remember the shooting of that protester, Elijah Moore?" they asked. "No," he answered plainly. "I have no memory of it." But the file had it all documented. A teenager throwing rocks during a protest. Harris firing his weapon without command, and Moore being unarmed. There had been previous complaints of excessive force, the inspector said. John stayed silent. Reconciling with the man he had been wasn't easy. That evening he returned to the neighborhood. But this time, without a uniform, no one there knew he was a cop. And he was determined to keep it that way. Children played in the park. Elderly women swept their front steps. Teens hung out on street corners, listening to music and rapping among themselves. John watched them. These people, once seen as threats, now felt human. The next day, there was a robbery at a small corner store. The thief got away, but the elderly shopkeeper was injured. John arrived before the police. He wrapped the wound, stopped the bleeding, told the woman, "Don't call the cops. It'll only make things worse." Then he slipped away through the back alleys. But that day, whispers about John spread through the neighborhood. Marcus has changed. He used to be angry, but now he helps. He talks like a grown man now. John wasn't just walking the neighborhood anymore, he was living in it, but that meant living a double life. By day, he signed off on police reports. By night, he taught street kids how to shoot hoops. His biggest test came one night over the police radio. The speaker crackled. "Attention, all units, coordinated drug raid in South Side, mobilize immediately." The address was in Marcus's neighborhood, and John was in the patrol car. "I'll just observe," he told himself. "I won't intervene." But when the raid began, chaos erupted. Officers stormed homes, women cried, children screamed in fear. One young man reached for his pocket, a cop reached for his gun. John shouted, "Get on the ground! Show your hands!" The kid dropped to the floor before the shot was fired. All he had in his pocket was a phone. In that moment, another life was spared because of John. But for the officers who now questioned his loyalty, that moment marked the beginning of the end. The next day, he was summoned before the disciplinary board. Disobeying orders, intervening in a raid, defending a suspect. John felt a knot in his chest. "I'm not just a cop anymore," he said. "I'm also one of these people. I judged them without knowing them. I was wrong." There was a moment of silence. Then the verdict came, disciplinary action, but no dismissal, because his old files were still unresolved and the memory loss granted legal protection. But that day, John made his own decision. "Not Harris, not Marcus, my name is no one." John turned in his badge. He spent his days at the local youth center, volunteering, teaching kids basketball, reading, even basic legal rights. No one looked at him with fear anymore. But deep down, he knew this peace wouldn't last forever. One morning, a black SUV was parked outside the center. The window rolled down slowly. The man at the wheel lowered his sunglasses. Their eyes met. "John, we've been looking for you everywhere." That voice, it jolted his memory. Detective Roy Miller, his former partner, and the witness to the darkest parts of John's life. Roy took him to a nearby diner. "Look, man," he said, "the investigation against you has been officially closed. There's no solid evidence you did anything wrong, and the department wants you back. You're wasting away on these streets." John shook his head. "These streets taught me something, Roy. I used to see these people as case numbers. Now I know their dreams, their kids, their stories. My weapon isn't the only thing I carry now. I carry my heart." Roy's tone hardened. "This is Chicago, John. You don't survive with heart. You survive with discipline. What you've done is a disgrace. You're a cop who turned his back on the badge." John stood up. Maybe the real betrayal was judging people without ever trying to understand them. But Roy's visit wasn't just a warning. Whispers began to spread in the neighborhood. Marcus was a cop? Has he been spying on us all along? What if he's just playing undercover? Some stopped speaking to him altogether. Even the kids hesitated to ask questions. One evening, a teenager, Darnell, came up to him and poured out his heart. "If you lied to us, Coach, that'd hurt the most, because we believed in you. You were one of us." John's eyes filled with tears. "Darnell, I've never lied to you. I stopped lying to myself a long time ago." That night, he slipped into a local police reform conference, held in an old precinct building. Both officers and community leaders were present. One by one, speakers offered ideas for how to fix the system. Then came the open mic session. John stood up. A murmur ran through the crowd. "Excuse me," he began. "I used to be a police officer. Then I lost my memory. And then I found my heart." He continued, "People gave me two names, John Harris, the officer, Marcus, the kid from the neighborhood, but I lived both lives. And both were real. I've walked through the system. And then I lived among the ones that system failed. That's why I'm telling you, change doesn't come from the inside or the outside alone. It comes from both. And those who can be the bridge between the two, they're the ones who truly change the world." The room went silent. Some officers looked away. Some community members wiped tears from their eyes. Weeks later, the neighborhood faced a crisis. A young boy had gone missing. The police were slow to respond. The family was desperate. But John didn't wait. He rallied the kids, the parents, the volunteers, flashlights, maps, phones, everyone mobilized. By dawn, the boy was found safe in an abandoned building. As they took him to the hospital, his family hugged John in tears. In that moment, everything changed. No one cared anymore whether he was a cop or not. What mattered was who he was. And to them, he wasn't John Harris. He wasn't Marcus. He was Father John.